Welcome to Joy of Business with host Simone Milasas, a dynamic business leader with a difference. Simone has founded and operated many businesses from a young age and has always done business differently. Today, Simone is the worldwide coordinator of Access Consciousness and travels the world presenting Joy of Business programs using access tools and empowering people to know that they can create business in a different way and make money doing it. Simone Milasas, weekly on OMTimes Radio.
Hi everybody, welcome to Joy of Business. You're on OMTimes with your host Simone Milasas. And today I have at least one of my favorite people, but possibly two of my favorite people. I'm going to leave that up to the lovely Mrs. Chutisa Bowman to see if she decides to pop on. So I'm here with Steve Bowman. Welcome, Steve.
Hi, everyone.
And maybe Chutisa might come on, but let's say a little hello to her anyway.
Hi, everyone.
Chutisa is like me. I think that she's like, no, I'll just sit here and you and Steve do it. But you know what? We'll see what happens about that. So
it never works out that way.
No. So now the topic today is we're actually doing this because I want to do some little chapters at the back of my new book coming out at the end of the year, which is called Getting Out of Debt Joyfully. So getting out of debt joyfully. And it's like most people think that, you know, it's something that you have to ignore. It's like being in debt. It's like you're wrong. It's like it's not about being wrong. It's about changing your point of view and becoming aware of your financial reality. So this has sort of like a bit of a different spin on it, I think, is where we're heading, is these two people, and primarily Steve here, who I'll be chatting to, is have created such a different point of view around money. It's like and I've listened to them, I've been around them for quite a few years now, and that's one of the major things that I talk about when you are getting out of debt, is you have to be willing to change your point of view around money. I mean, you know, one of Einstein's theories is that you're doing the same thing and expecting a different result, and I see so many people do that with money. They do the same complaints, they have the same story, you know, it's like story number 42, story number 554. It's like of your trauma and drama with money and everything that is. So what I'd like you to start looking at is, what is your current point of view around money that if you changed it would change your entire reality with money? So let's start off, Steve. I'd love for you to give me a little bit of a rundown on how you were with money even growing up. Like, what was that like for you? Were you educated about money? Were you taught about money? Was it hidden? Was it ignored? Or was it something that was really out in the open and you actually, you know, talked about?
Do you know, that's the first time anyone's ever asked me that question. This is the first time I will ever answer it. So when I was growing up, we grew up, my mother was a single mother, and there were 3 kids there, and we had a quite abusive father who was, you know, chasing us around for something like 15 or 20 years. Money never, ever came up. But it never came up in a positive nor a negative. It never came up in a judgment nor a possibility. It just literally never came up. So I suppose, thinking about it now, I grew up never knowing what anyone else's point of view about money was. So when we started looking at things, I always knew from a very young age, even before I met Chutisa, and we met when we were 16, first boyfriend and girlfriend ever, and then we got married, and you know we've been married over 40 years now. So the thing with that was that we always had a different point of view about money. We didn't know what other people's points of view were about money because we didn't grow up, or I didn't grow up with any of these points of view about money. So the interesting thing to me was that when I look at money now, I'm willing to change my point of view about it because I never grew up with one.
Nice. So were you actually ever, there was no point of view about money, whether it was positive or negative, it's like, were things affordable, or were things sort of put to, you know, you can get that only on Christmas and birthdays, or was there a cash flow that was available, or, you know?
Well, the interesting thing is when I look at my family, my sister, for example, bought into a point of view that money was always someone else's problem, not hers. Now, we grew up in the same family, but you always hear or see things different. So, you know, the thing I would say that I've learned over the years is it's your own point of view that matters. It's not anyone else's. So you can blame your parents, you can blame society, but that's just an excuse for you not changing your point of view about money. So one of the things we found, for example, I grew up with no money. And when I met Chutisa, things started to change because then we started to create our life together. And, for example, we went to the US and stayed there. We lived there for 2 years in the US, and we lived there on a $2 a day, what do they call those dinners? Movie dinners, TV dinners, $2 a night, TV dinners. We lived on that for something like a year and a half. But we always knew that we could create money, and we did whilst we were over there. And what that gave us is the knowing that we actually can create. So money didn't come into it. The fact that we could create did come into it.
So you said that when you met Chutisa, you sort of had more of an awareness that you could create. Do you perceive that it was having somebody else around you that had no point of view about what creation was, or what did that look like for you with another person creating?
Again, another question that's never been asked of me. So one of the great things about being with someone who's always being creative, not doing creative, she's actually being creative, is that it brings out the creative in you, in me. It brings that out in me. So we've always created our life from how we wanted our life to be. And the interesting thing with that is that has also included money. One of the things I'll say now is that one of the great gifts that everyone can give to their life, and we've learnt this over the last few years, is it's never too late. It's never too late to actually create wealth. It's never too late to create change. It's never too late to actually change your financial reality. Every year we look at what else can we change, what else can we change, what else can we change. Even 3 weeks ago, we totally changed our life around financial reality in all sorts of different ways. So the key thing in that is that if we'd had a point of view about what money should have been or should not have been, then we wouldn't have been able to change that. But what we find is that when we start to look at whatever point of view about money or about debt is, if we're willing to change that, everything else changes. And we find this every year. It's not just a one-off thing. It happens all the time.
So I remember in my book, Joy Business, I wrote something about when I lived in London and I had hardly any money, and I had at least 50 recipes you could cook with 2-minute noodles. And there was a woman who came up to me not long ago and she said, I want to thank you for that, because I look at you now and think, if she has 50 recipes you can come up with 2-minute noodles, and that's the way Simone lived and what she's created now, then I can do this too. And it was quite thrilling to be that sort of inspiration. But what I do remember is when I had at least 50 recipes on 2-minute noodles, I didn't have a point of view I was poor. I didn't have a point of view that I lacked anything or there was a scarcity. I was just willing to be aware that if I didn't spend money on buying, lots of different types of food or expensive food, then I would have more money to travel, because at that time, travel was definitely a priority for me. So my question is, when you were living on $2 a day on your TV dinners, is that what we call them, TV dinners, what was the mentality? What was the point of view that you had?
Well, the point of view for us was that we would do whatever was required to actually create more. So I was doing 2 master's degrees in Washington, D.C., and Chutisa, out of nothing, created a very successful fashion design business that was the talk of the town in New York City, whilst we were living on $2 a day TV dinners. and it was because we never saw ourselves as poor. We just knew that we created. We had to create. And she was absolutely amazing during the 2 years that we were there. She would work, 23-hour days to create, and actually created a very successful fashion design business, which is unheard of. And I was doing 2 master's degrees at the one time, which again was unheard of. But we didn't think of that other than this is how we're choosing to create our life. I wonder what Chutisa's view on that would be.
Well, I was actually going to come over to Chutisa on that before the next break. And I'd love to know just a couple of questions too about what were you brought up like with money, in regards to money? Were you educated about it? Were you taught about it? Or was it ignored? Or you weren't allowed to talk about it? What was the general, vibe in your family? Now, you grew up in Thailand?
Yes. I grew up in a very much what you would classify as aristocratic family. So talking about money, it means you boasting or you being obnoxious about it. So you're not supposed to be talking too much about money. But my father is what they would call a black sheep of the family. So, he would do everything that we're not supposed to do as the aristocratic family. So he got judged so badly. And he saw himself as an entrepreneur. And in those times, we're talking about 60, 70 years ago, there's no such thing as entrepreneur. So, the things that he did would have been judged as risky, risk taker, doing terrible things with money. So I have experience feeling the judgment that projected at him, of course, at our family, because I have a father who's doing things against the society and against the culture that he should be working and making good money and doing the right thing. But there he went out and trying to create a business that was so successful. So, that kind of angst about money was there, even though we had money, but the anxiety around money was huge.
So what sort of, when you say terrible things, I'm like, I want to know more about the terrible things that your father did with money. It's like, what, is that just a judgment because it was different? Or it's like, what sort of things, did he get involved in, did you learn about as growing up?
Well, he's one of these who has big vision. If some people want to go and have a retail business, my father would look at building a whole mall. If somebody else thinking about doing something, building a garage, he's building an airport. That's what he was doing. And then he had capacity to get people to invest in all these sort of things. And I realized that, there's two things. You might have capacity to talk about money and inspire people to donate, invest. But you have to have a capacity to generate as well. It's to do with doing as well. You have to be able to make it happen. And, I sense that that's the part that he needed to have to become a successful.
So when just before we head off to the first break, when he was like this, and I mean, that sounds like so much fun to me, and it's like, let's aim bigger, let's go bigger. But it is very much against his reality. Can you give me really quickly like a sense of how he was with that? Was he ever nervous, or was he afraid, or was he always functioning from, let's see what else is possible?
I'm just trying to think about it because there's so many judgments surrounded us that I think I was too young, and that's pre-access to even know any better. If I have the tools and the knowing that I know now, I would have not judged my father as much as I did. Okay,
so we're going to be heading off to a break now. And when we come back, I know that Steve's got something to say. And it reminds me, too, some stuff that I had when I was growing up with my dad. Did a million different businesses just for the sheer fun of it. So we'll be back really soon here with Steve and Chutisa Bowman.
What if your job, your life, and your business didn't have to look or feel like anyone else's around you? The Joy of Business tools and classes aren't about following a set path to success. They are a treasure box of questions, tools, and resources for you to expand what you already know about business and take the leap into more possibilities. Learn more about the Access Joy of Business 101 class by going to accessjoyofbusiness.com/101. What do you know that could change your business and the world? accessjoyofbusiness.com/101.
Host your show on IOM-FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM-FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
Hi, this is Sylvia Henderson, intuitive life coach and energy healer. Are you ready to elevate and rise way above your normal? Be sure to listen to my show, Intuitive Transformations, on OMTimes Radio, Sunday evenings at 9 p.m. Eastern. Get the inspiration you need to transform your life.
The number one reason girls drop out of school in sub-Saharan Africa is lack of access to feminine hygiene products. The Pads for Schoolgirls Project, an outreach of Humanity Healing International, is changing this paradigm by setting up sewing programs at schools, teaching girls a vocational skill while producing the reusable pads that help keep them attending classes. The girls pay it forward by making and giving pad kits to other girls in need. To learn more, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is. The cutting edge of conscious radio, OMTimes Radio, IOM FM.
Hi everybody, welcome back. You Enjoy Business with Simone Milasas, your host, and I'm with Steven and Chutisa Bowman. And we're basically talking about, well, it's leading wherever, but we're talking about creating a different point of view around money. And one of the things I've noticed, even from this first segment, is how were you brought up with money? It's like, what was the point of view that you were brought up with? Like, I know in my family, around the dinner table, you were not allowed to talk about it. You didn't talk about it. That's, it was just there. Okay, but you weren't meant to talk about money. Now, thankfully, I was educated about money as I grew older from my father, who was an accountant, awesome man, and he felt it was necessary to educate all of his kids about money. So he did actually do that, which I'm incredibly grateful for. And what I'm also noticing is I'm wondering how many people out there listening grew up with a sense of lack or a sense of poverty or a sense of no money or something different, which then creates your current point of view around money. And what if you could change all of that? What if none of that was real? What if you realized that you are the source of creation, not money is the source of creation? So I know that Steve Bowman had something else he wanted to add here with his lovely wife's father and how he was. And he appears to be, I already get what an amazing man he was, and sort of influential, and the sheer joy or fun of creation is what it appears to me. So
it's interesting when you have a whole lot of people that judge it because it doesn't fit their reality. It doesn't fit the reality of an aristocratic family. He was brutally judged by most of the family. Yet at his funeral, and we were there, we happened to be there when he passed away. At his funeral were some very senior government and somewhat shadowy figures. And they turned up to the funeral to pay their respects because he had created things with them and shielded them at the same time. So he was a man that we will only ever know some of the story, ever. We'll only ever know part of the story. But because he was so fiercely judged by the family, then it's only been in the last sort of 10 or 15 years that we've come to the awareness that maybe he actually did things that we wouldn't even know about that had created huge change out there. So the thing we take away from that is judgment kills all of that possibility.
It does. Judgment does kill. You cannot create if you are functioning from judgment. So if you came out of judgment, even if you started with that as the first tool that you start to change your point of view around money, what judgment do you have around money that if you didn't have that judgment would change your entire reality, change your cash flows? In how many places have you judged where money can show up and where it cannot show up? You've decided that something's impossible rather than actually looking at what possibilities are available that you have not yet asked for. So,
and that judgment is very true for me because I was not, until Gary Douglas, the founder of Access Consciousness, facilitated me to see that I am very cautious and very much not a risk taker with money. And I see the connection between the fact that my dad was a risk taker and not very cautious about money. So everything large and everything huge in his universe that he chose. So I would choose anything that large or huge, I would not choose because I had that connection that's just not, what's the word? That's not responsible with money until Gary actually showed me that that's the risk, not the risk taker. Everything shifted in our universe. Now we're willing to look at, a bigger project.
So interesting that you say that you are not a risk taker. When I look at the story that Steve just told about you guys being in New York, living $2 a day off the TV dinners, and you starting this major fashion label from pretty much nothing, to me that is actually a risk. So how do you see that?
A risk taker with money. particularly if anyone else's money. I will never risk someone else's money. And I just talking to you now, it's a aha moment that I risk my money. Anyone else's money, I wouldn't. And that's linked to the judgment of when you're a big entrepreneur and you want to create a major success out there, you have to be able to use other people's money, right? So if you can't be a risk taker with other people's money, then you're going to always be cautious. So you can just sort of keep yourself small.
So what would you advise to anyone that's out there listening now as sort of like, you know, I mean, I see there's a big difference between just going out there and being like, well, yeah, let's just grab people's money and, you know, do whatever with it. Then, you know, are you meant to have like a plan in action, or how would you advise people? How do you see that being? It's like the difference between, you know, a high risk, low risk, or what other information do you have with that?
Well, I mean, in all of this, one of the premises of this conversation is how to get yourself out of debt and how to get yourself out of debt with joyfully. And one of the things that we've found, we've had investors in some businesses, and the businesses we've decided to fold up, so we paid all the investors back, even though we didn't have to. The thing for us behind that is that we're willing to risk anything. Chutisa and I, are willing to risk anything, but we're not willing to risk anything on behalf of other people. And that's still a limitation. It's not a right or wrong. It's still a limitation. However, we've also seen other people that just couldn't give a rat's. They couldn't care what other people had given them and what they would do with that. So I think in all of this is that be aware of when other people are willing to invest in your business. Be aware and be willing to make good on what needs to occur. I mean, that's just our point of view. So the thing that makes it easier for us is that we know that we can create money out of thin air constantly, and we do. Knowing that, how can you ever be in debt?
So talk a little bit more about that, creating money out of thin air constantly.
Well, there are so many ways to actually create wealth, and this is another conversation that we'll invite Chutisa onto into a minute, is the difference between wealth and riches and what we've learned in our life. And even as recently as a couple of weeks ago, just having these aha moments all the time. Don't forget, it's never too late. So creating money out of thin air is just a way of looking at. There is so much money out there. There is so many possibilities out there. They're there screaming at you to look at, yet we refuse to see them all the time. What we've found in our life is that there have been so many different things that we're now doing that we refuse to see for 5 years or 10 years or 15 years. And now we're doing it. Once we've got over our points of view, then all of a sudden our business has increased. So, you know, I have a very large consulting business, an advisory business. I had the point of view that I was the valuable commodity. Okay, 2 things wrong with that story. Number 1, valuable. Number 2, commodity. So as soon as Chutisa and I started exploring that and saying, well, what if we created the business in a different way so that I wasn't the valuable commodity in this particular business? What would that look like? And still do the stuff I love doing. And that then created other businesses. So now we're online. Now we're doing a whole range of other things. We've got other people involved in it. Once I got over my point of view that I'd had enough of staff, I had 300 staff at one stage. Enough already. Once I got over the point of view that I didn't want any more staff, then the business started to grow again. Once I got over the point of view that I needed staff, the business started to grow again.
So the basis here is getting over your point of view.
That's the kicker.
So it's like, what point of view do you currently have that if you didn't have it would change your entire reality? Do you see the gist of these questions that we're coming up with here? It's literally when you have a point of view, it's like if we could work everything out with our logical mind, we'd have everything we ever desired. And it's usually the insane points of view, the insane stuff that locks us up and doesn't allow us to receive and perceive all possibilities that are available. And I'm with you, Steve. I think there's possibilities absolutely everywhere. And I know one of the tools that Brendan, my partner, and I have continuously used, and we use pretty much every day if we remember it, we ask how many more revenue streams can show up for us today. Now, we don't ask the question with going, right, we must work out the revenue streams for today. We just keep asking the questions randomly, like while you're cooking dinner or while you're in the shower, whatever it is. You just ask the question, and what I see is happening is you're putting it out there into the universe to show you what other revenue streams are possible. Now, we've probably added about 5 or 6 other revenue streams to our life in the past 18 months, and things that we would never have even thought about. Like if we had sat down and tried to work it out or, come up with some strategic plan, it wouldn't have shown up the way it has shown up. So what if you're willing to receive infinite possibilities from absolutely everywhere of, other revenue streams and creation streams? Because if you also start to look at it as creation streams, what I've noticed is the revenue starts to show up. If you make it about money, it will always be about the money. Whereas one of the things I never have done, is create for money. I always created for the fun of creating, and then the money showed up. So just while we go off to the next break here, I just want to add, where can people find out more about what you're creating with your online stuff, Steve?
Well, there's a range of different things. We've got a website which is consciousgovernance.com. There's another one which is befrabjous.com, which is a blog site that has all sorts of amazing stuff on it.
What is it? Say it again.
Befrabjous.
Can you spell that?
.com. B-E, and then the word frabjous, Frabjous, comes from Alice in the Looking Glass. It's a Lewis Carroll saying that's about amazingly joyful. Well, be that. So and you'll find some cool stuff that Chutisa's written in there, some stuff she's doing there. There's also the luxproject.com. There's also, I think I mentioned nomorebusinessusual.com. There's also strategicawareness.com. Or, if in doubt, do a Google search on Chutisa Bowman, because then you'll find all the websites, because hers is a lot easier to find than when you Google on Steven Bowman.
Or you can always just email us at team@accessjoybusiness.com, and we'll let you find the Bowmans as well, because I highly recommend going to one of their masterclasses. They are absolutely fabulous, and they have a plethora of books available. So we'll be back really soon. You're on Joy of Business with Simone Milasas, and we've got Steven and Chutisa Bowman on today. And check out accessjoyofbusiness.com if you want to find out more classes in your area. We've got a whole lot of Joy of Business facilitators facilitating Joy of Business 101, Business Done Different, all around the world. We'll be back really soon. I'm going to ask them about wealth and riches.
Have you ever wondered how to change your love paradigm? The secret key is finding a love partnership, not just a regular connection. How do you find these? Through conscious relationships. Ascending Hearts Dating is a dating site for people like you that believes in second chances and a different type of spiritual connection. Try Ascending Hearts for free today at ascendinghearts.com and change your love paradigm. Ascending Hearts, the premier dating community for the spiritually awake.
Radio Namaste leads you down the yellow brick road into portals of consciousness with the blue-collar goddess as your host. Interviews with humans who could be famous or just popular, and answers to everything are on the agenda. Tune into OMTimes Radio and drop in on Thursdays at 3 Eastern. It's a different brand of enlightenment.
Host your show on IOM-FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM-FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
Would your business and life like to be bigger? Would you like to have more fun with everything you do? Simone Milasas travels the world facilitating Joy of Business seminars. These classes are for you if you would like to create more money and joy, expand your business, and work smarter, not harder. Join her live or watch the online seminar from the comfort of your own home. Go to www.accessjoyofbusiness.com to register and for more information.
Connecting you with the best of the conscious minds in the world. OMTimes Radio. IOM-FM.
Hey everybody, welcome back. You're still here with Simone Milasas on Joy of Business radio station on OMTimes. AccessJoyOfBusiness.com. Check it out. And I am still here with Steven and Chutisa Bowman. I forgot to mention we're in hot, sunny Cancun, Mexico. we're at this resort. Gary Douglas, the founder of Access Consciousness, is about to do a Choice of Possibilities class starting tomorrow. And it's very strange. If you've ever been to Cancun, I feel like I'm on a cruise ship on land. So, but anyway, how does it get any better than this? So one of the things, I was actually just went snorkeling with Steve this morning, and then we obviously went to the bar to have a cold beer, and we started talking, of course, about business. And he briefly just mentioned in the last segment about how still educating themselves about money. It's a constant, place of education about money and about business, because you are constantly learning different things. You meet different people. And my strong suggestion is, don't ever think that you have to know everything. Ask a question. If you hear something and you have no idea what it is, you're not wrong for not knowing what it is. Ask a question. Ask someone who's talking about it, what do they mean by that? Or what does that look like? Or how did they get started with that? Or how did they create that? Like, that's how you gather information to educate yourself on money and business, which therefore changes your point of view continuously. So one of the things that Steve was mentioning was only just a few weeks ago that, he had more awareness, or both of them had more awareness on the difference sort of between wealth and riches. And you were saying to me, Steve, that you were looking at a lot of the times of, creating the cash flow, which is great. It's like always making sure that you have cash flow, which I remember meeting this great businessman in South Africa once, and he said to me, there's three things important in life. And it was something like love, believing, and faith. And he said, and then the most important one, cash flow. I was like, yeah, that's good. So tell me what happened for you guys, like when you're talking about cash flow and the difference and where you came to the wealth awareness.
The thing for us is that we're constantly looking at the points of view we've got on anything. So I had a point of view for many years, which worked for us to a point, that cash flow was what our consulting business provided to us. And then that cash flow we could then generate and create in terms of other types of investments. Unfortunately, what that point of view did, that I only realised about 3 or 4 weeks ago, is that it stopped me from looking at other generative sources of wealth, because I was focused on the cash flow. And, I was convinced it was right for about 3 or 4 years, that cash flow. As soon as Chutisa and I had this conversation, well, what if there was more to wealth than just the cash flow? What if there were different ways of looking at the cash flow? What if there were things that could be created that created cash flow in a way that it wasn't cash flow, so that we could have cash flow that we didn't have to decide was cash flow? That totally changed then the way we started. And from that moment, 3 weeks ago, we created 2 new businesses that have already started to create a different flow of money, because I'm not calling it cash flow now.
So tell me what you would now describe as the difference between cash flow, riches, and wealth.
So they're all points of view, first off. So wealth to us at the moment, and it changes all the time, wealth to us is the willingness to create and to generate from that creation. Now, we'll invite Chutisa in a minute too, because she's very erudite when it comes to looking at wealth. Cash flow can be very seductive, but can also take your eye off the creative game as well too. So, yes, it can be important, but it is not the end game either. And I think I had misidentified cash flow as the end game.
As you're talking about it too, like even for me, I'm looking at this thinking cash flow. I mean, my dad always taught me about cash flow too. But he also, I remember at one stage, I think I was like 6, and my mother and father were arguing about money. And my brother and I were like, oh, we've got no money. What should we do? So my brother went and got all his favourite toys, and I went and got all my favourite toys. Mm-hmm. And we walked over to my mum and dad and said, hey, look, we heard you arguing that we've got no money, so we will sell our toys so that we have money. And years later, my parents told me that they were just like, oh, my goodness, what are we doing? Like, the kids want to sell their toys. But what they were arguing about too was they didn't have any cash flow. Yeah. They had lots of equity, but they had no cash flow. And so I learnt the difference between what that is and also what it can create. So I definitely see the value of having a constant creation of cash flow. And also what I'm perceiving too is wealth has a longevity to it that sort of cannot be destroyed. It's more like of an energy is what I'm getting as well. So, Ms. Chutisa, how do you see the difference of wealth, riches, cash flow, etc.? And what have you got to say here?
Well, the word cash flow always have some funky energy for me all the time. And it just took me, like let's say about 3 weeks ago when I said to him, cash flow almost creates no choice. Once you stop working or stop doing all these, you stop the flow of cash. So what would it be like if you look at building assets that create generative income, generative revenue? And when you talk about generative revenue, it just keep on generating more revenue, right? So it's different energy to cash flow. Do you know what I mean? Because cash flow, like, and I connect to linear.
Yeah.
And as soon as I said that to Steve, I said, do you realize another word that we use to is Steve often say, you know, we are baby boomer. We are in which most people of our colleagues are going to retirement. And Steve often say, I will never retire. I will work forever. Can you feel that? He's already set himself up that he will work forever, right? So I said, well, that is different choice to, we have so much generative wealth that we will choose to do the work, to be the contribution to make the world a better place forever. It's different to I will work forever so I can have the cash flow.
Yeah, it feels more like it's a choice, not a necessity.
Exactly. The cash flow is not much choice in that. It's like we must have a cash flow. But if you have generative wealth that keeps generating itself, doesn't matter about the cash flow because it's just.
It's also, there's a description that I heard Gary Douglas say once too, which I thought was pretty clever and gave me the energy of the difference of it. Is like someone who functions from riches is the person who always has to have that cash flow, you know, must fly business first class, must, you know, get a limousine or, you know, have a beautiful car. Whereas someone who functions from wealth has the willingness to lose everything as well and be in constant creation and can be the person who gets a taxi or a train or, you know, flies economy or first class. They don't have a point of view of what that has to look like. It's actually a choice. But there's an energy I get that when you have that with money, that there is this constant place that money can show up and it will show up, and not just in cash flow, but in, I've got to say, currency flows. There's an energy that no one can take that away from you.
I think in all of that, one of the great keys to this is to educate yourself in all of these possibilities. Now, as soon as I say educate yourself in these possibilities, I can hear eeks going off in people's universes. Education can be as simple as getting onto Google and doing a search on YouTube on how can I, yada, 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 whatever it might be. But, yeah, even if you Googled something like, what is wealth, how do wealthy people get wealthy, and then read it through your own points of view and choose the one or two things in there that actually make sense to you, because that's at least a start. We found out 3 weeks ago that there were areas of wealth that we'd never considered before, but they'd always been there screaming at us, but we'd refused to see what they were. And as soon as we realised what those things were, we started putting them into action. And all of a sudden, we're now making $1,000 a day, $2,000 a day in areas that we could have always done, but we'd never thought of that. That's over and above everything else that we're doing.
So, and the one thing I would say too is that educating about money is find what works for you. Like find is what is joyful for you. I remember years ago, I had a bunch of people sort of talking about currency trading, and they were, you know, you should get into currency trading, you should do this. And of course I went, oh, I should do currency trading. So I started looking at it and I started, you know, researching it, and it felt like hard work to me. And I realized I had been playing with stocks, like in stock markets for quite a few years. My dad had taught me a lot about that. And I realized I had more, I wouldn't say comfort, there was just more this sense of ease and peace playing in the stock market. I think for me, I liked the fact that they were companies and I could look at that, which is interesting because I work with different currencies every single day. So you would think as, you know, general awareness, knowledge that currency trading would be easy for me. but I wasn't finding it fun. So I was like, oh, okay, so currency trading is not for me at this moment. It might be in 10 years, 20 years, or next year, but I prefer to play on the stock market, which sort of works for us. And then there's different other things, like recently, which I know you guys have been involved in as well, is I started to buy jewelry and selling that through a friend of ours. You know, Gary Douglas owns the Guild antique shop in Brisbane, Australia. And Chris Hughes is the manager, who's a friend of ours who runs it. And it's been so much fun to like buy jewelry, learn about that, learn about what's selling, and have been making, you know, another revenue stream, some more money on that, and educating myself about that as well. So, Chutisa, what have you got to add to the whole education about money? What would you offer to people to start to educate themselves?
I think the key question is when you hear the word educating yourself, it's not like you're going into financial planning 101 or anything like that, or get accountancy degree. It's more like find one thing that's fun for you and just learn as much as possible about that particular thing. Like you said about jewelry. If you like that, learn everything about jewelry. It could be antique, it could be vintage, it could be gold and silver. Just find one thing that, you know, like your heart or whatever, and then just learn as much, and then be in the question about what would it take for me to make money with this. You know, you can buy and sell, or you can do design, you can do all kinds of things. If you find one at a time, baby steps. If big financial training is too big, one thing that makes your heart sing, and just go and learn more about that.
And I would also add, before we go to the next break, it's like, don't make it significant. It's like, have fun with it and have joy with it. There's so many things that I have checked out as another currency flow, cash flow, revenue stream, creation stream. And I might not yet have instituted them, but it doesn't mean I'm not going to. It's like, how many people out there come up with an idea, or this, you know, they've had these generative ideas, and then because it doesn't come into fruition today, you start to kill the future possibilities, rather than just asking a question like, okay, so when could that show up, or when would that show up, or when is the time for that to come into fruition? So ask questions, don't kill future possibilities, don't go to the limitations or conclusions, and have fun with it. We'll be back really soon for our last segment. You're Simone Milasas on Joy Business.
What if you are the only one who truly knows how to create your business and your life? This September, the Joy of Business is coming to Denver, and Simone Milasas will be giving you tools and practices to discover what works for you to expand your business and your life. The one-day seminar, Access Business 101, has no prereqs and is followed by 2 days of Access Business 102. These classes are for anyone desiring to create more. Join us at accessjoyofbusiness.com/classes. Is now the time to create what you know is possible but haven't been choosing?
As difficult as it is to believe, there are places in Africa where human traffickers sell albino children and their body parts for use in magic rituals. Humanity Healing International is actively working in Uganda to change this paradigm. The Albino Rescue Project finds albino children who are at risk and places them in safe schools and environments where they can learn and grow free from fear. To learn more or to sponsor a child, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is. Are you trying to get from point A to point B and need a little advice? Connect with the counselors at OMTimes Advisors. Whether you're looking for a life coach or a spiritual intuitive, the advisors participating at advisors.omtimes.com were carefully chosen based on their gifts, skills, and professionalism. OMTimes Advisors, connecting you with the best advisors in the business. Join Elliot Jollish, the business therapist, each Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern for the Elliot Jollish Hour, as he interviews business experts on your behalf. And you're invited to email your business questions to questions@ecjgroup.com for answers, live, on air every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on the Elliot Jollish Hour. Your conscious connection to a more mindful world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Hi everybody, welcome back. You're with Simone Milasas on Joy of Business radio station, and we've got Chutisa and Steve Bowman. So it's our last segment. So I thought we'd bring up debt again, that big four-letter word starting with a big D. Now, one of the things that you quite often hear is the reference to good debt and bad debt. So, Chutisa, it's like I was wondering if you could start us off here and talking about how you see the difference between debt and sort of demystifying, the judgment of that most people have around debt and being in debt.
Well, the thing that people call bad debt is they use other people's money, like the bank's money, but buy consumable goods that spend, and the goods doesn't actually expand and grow money for you. But you can create a good debt by taking money, like getting the loan from the bank for, let's say, 5% interest, and use that money to generate 20-25% return on that money. So that is a better way of using the debt and create a good debt.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with debt always is that if you're using other people's money, which is the definition of a debt, to create an asset that is going to then create revenue for you, then why would you call it a debt? If you're using a debt, that is, money that you owe other people, to create something that you are going to consume, and it's not an asset that will create money for you, then that is the debt that you want to stay away from. So, again, the thing is, get rid of all the things where you are consuming using other people's money, but look at ways where you can use other people's money to create assets that then create you money.
So for people listening out there who just think, these guys are talking double Dutch, it's like that, how can that apply to me? I've got, college debt, I've got, all this debt that's sort of rolled up. What do you recommend? Some questions, some basic tools just for people to start to change that, to start to get out of that funk of thinking that this is their life, that there is nothing, that can change.
It's never too late to start in any of this. And it's never too late whether you're 20, 30, 40, 50 or 60, 70, 80. It doesn't matter, because every time you change, then that changes your life as well too. So some practical advice on this. This is not financial advice, by the way. This is just practical advice, is to look at ways that you can reduce the amount of consumable debt that you've got, where things that you're using it to consume. Look at your credit cards as ways of actually purchasing assets that will create revenue. Now, what are those assets that create revenue? Damn it, do a Google search that says, where are the assets that create revenue? And start to look at the ones that will actually make fun for you. And start looking at how you can then use some of your money that you're creating in other ways to then generate some of these assets. Even if it's only $1,000 a month or $500 a month, it's more than anyone who's not doing $500 a month. You start where you start, and it is absolutely the best way to start is just by starting.
I know Chris Hughes, a mutual friend of ours, I had him on the radio show once, and he was talking about, getting out of debt as well. And he was sort of talking, like the first thing that he did was buy himself one silver teaspoon, sterling silver teaspoon, to start to create the wealth in his life that knew matched the energy of where he wanted to be and what he wanted it to look like. So it wasn't like going out and buying a whole set of, sterling silver silverware. It was like one spoon. Just start with that. It's like, so what could you start with that's going to add to your life to make you have that energy more that is functioning from the wealth and functioning from the joy of being you, no matter what that takes and no matter what it looks like. So, Chutisa, have you got any questions or tools that you can offer people to Steve wanted to add something?
So I think the silver spoon example is brilliant. What will happen is if you want to buy a silver spoon, educate yourself on what the price of silver is. Buy it below that price. And therefore, you could always, if you wanted to, melt that silver spoon and still make more money than what you paid for it.
And there are some amazing people out there who find, silver, gold, etc., and they do sell it at melt value, and it's actually worth more than that. So, yeah, research it, because they don't make silver like that anymore. I mean, the silverware we've got at home is called the Joan of Arc series, and they literally don't make it anymore. The silversmith doesn't exist. So I keep buying more of it when I see it online, and when I have the money there that I go, okay, I'll buy a couple more bowls, or I'll buy this, etc. So I start to increase the value that I have in my house with what I'm purchasing to create that wealth. And that, I keep going back to the energy of it, because for me, it really creates the energy of how I would like to live. So, Steve, what else?
Well, one of the things that has really amazed us over decades is that if everyone who's listening to this, just understand that if you educate yourself on anything, that means that you'll know more than 99.99% of all the people out there. See, people only know what they know. And if you know a little more about something, then immediately you can see the value in things that others will not see. So using the silver spoon, read a little bit about silver, get on there, do a little half-hour course on YouTube for nothing about how do you value silver. Then look to see, do another search on where can I buy a silver spoon. You buy a silver spoon below melt value. Then do another search on where can I melt silver. Then you melt it. Then you've made an extra 20% more than what you've made before. Now, if you did that 30 times a week, just imagine.
I'm like, is it bad that I'm like, no, don't melt the beautiful silver. See, but I'm the one who'll buy it off you so that you don't melt it. There's always a customer somewhere. What else do we want to talk about with getting out of debt joyfully?
Maximizing profits.
Well, Steve, I have heard you talk about that a lot, which I like so talk about maximizing profits versus maximizing possibilities.
Yeah. Well, one of the issues always is that we find that a lot of people would rather have 100% of nothing than 20% of something. And if you've got the point of view that you want to maximize the amount of profit you'll get from something, you just won't, because you're always looking for the best time to sell it, for the best price, for the top dollar on whatever it is. What if you were actually really comfortable knowing that you just created 25% more than what you had when you first went into it? And what if you did that constantly? How much do you think you would generate in a year if everything you touched you were then able to sell or sell on for 25% more? Not 300% more, not 500% more, but 25% more. Most people would rather wait 3 years and sell something for double its price than to sell something for 25% more and do that 10 times a year.
You know, we just recently, Brendan and myself and Gary and Dane bought a house on the river in Noosa, and we did that from selling shares that we made really good money on. Now, we could have kept those shares and kept going, oh, let's keep it until it goes up further and further and further. And we saw this house and went, let's buy this river house. That felt like fun, literally. So we were like, all right, let's buy this house. So we still have shares in this company that has done very well for us, but we've also, what I liked was the diversity that we ended up creating. There was this other revenue stream, but I've got to say, it wasn't from this being safe. It was just literally like, let's have more fun. Let's spread the fun around and spread the joy around of how many more revenue creation streams can we create. So what if you had that point of view? What if you were willing to, I like the way Steve put it, it's like having, you know, people would prefer to have the 0 of 100% rather than 20% of something. So where can you start making a profit in something? Where can you start actually maximizing your profits and your possibilities by the choices that you make, whether it's like deemed as risky or deemed as different, etc. What if you were being you? What if you were actually willing to know what you know and choose based on that? And like Steven and Chutisa have both said, it's like, what if it's a matter of educating yourself? So we are almost at the end of the show, so I'm very, very grateful for having you guys on here. But we have about another 2 minutes. So is there anything else that you would like to, say to people, give them a question, a tool, anything, a little story about getting out of debt joyfully? And I want to say, don't let it get you down. It's like you can change anything. And as Steve keeps saying, it's never too late. It's like you can do anything at any time. And every time he says that, I keep thinking of Charlie Chaplin having kids at 72. And Colonel Sanders from Kentucky Fried Chicken created his award-winning recipe in his early 80s. So he never gave up. He kept He kept trying it, that chicken recipe. I'm not sure if it's a good thing or not, but he did keep doing it. So anything else that you want to offer everyone here?
I just invite everyone who's listening to this to get out there and start looking around at what is freely available out there about creating and generating wealth. And just pick one thing. If you picked one thing, then you would be ahead of 99% of the population. And this is one of the great gifts of getting out of debt, is to change your point of view that it's all about getting out of debt. What if it wasn't about getting out of debt? What if it was about actually generating assets?
And creating. And the last thing I'd like to add too is being grateful. You know, if you're grateful for every single cent, dollar that comes into your life, from that gratitude, there's so much more that can be created. There's that key word again, that big C word, creation. So, Mrs. Bowman, Chutisa, anything else that you'd like to add here?
Well, just put aside percentage of your revenue or income. No matter how small it is, it will accumulate, and just use that money to buy assets that will generate more income for you or more revenue for you. So start small. Keep this put aside and use that money just to buy generative assets.
So even just for the sheer fun of it, even just a silver spoon.
Exactly. If you like silver spoon, put aside money and just buy one silver spoon when you can afford to get one silver spoon. And that in itself will be more generative for you and for your life.
And I've got to say, it goes back to the energy again too. If you've ever eaten off silver, you know what it feels like? There's just this like elegance and decadence to, like, you know, having your cereal from a silver spoon or soup from a silver spoon. So what if you could change the energy of your life, your whole entire life, your business and your money flows, and start to see something different show up? So thank you so much, Steven and Chutisa Bowman, for joining me here. I always love having you guys on the radio show, and we'll hope to see you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Simone, for having us.
You're welcome. Bye, everyone. See you next time. Don't forget to check out accessjoyofbusiness.com.